Mariana, thank you so much for talking to us today. You know, these days we are commemorating 40 years of the Chernobyl accident, and now nuclear facilities are once again under heavy threat, both in Iran and in Ukraine. How is the situation today even more complex than 40 years ago?
So Chernobyl was a major nuclear accident, and the causes of that accident go way back to the design of this particular reactor, the RBMK reactor, the faults within it, and the kind of political system that was not conducive to fixing these faults. It was an entirely avoidable accident. And yet it so happened that on April 26th, 1986, 40 years ago, a single person pressing a single button could essentially cause a major worldwide nuclear accident. The world has learned very important lessons from this accident. So there was an enormous push to improve nuclear safety of reactors, to decommission these kinds of reactors that had the design or fault in them, and to make nuclear safety culture the preeminent focus of all nuclear operators. Now, fast forward to the invasion, Russian invasion of Ukraine. In a bitter irony, Chernobyl nuclear power plant becomes the first nuclear facility, one of the first places in Ukraine to be occupied by the advancing Russian force. Now, that power plant was not operational, but it still is the site of a huge amount of radioactive material. And if all of us in the nuclear field were gravely concerned about that, the dangers that Russian invasion and occupation created in Chernobyl paled in comparison to what we would see then a week later on the night of March 3rd, 2022, at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. And there the situation was truly unprecedented. For the first time in history, a military force opened fire at an operating nuclear power plant, the biggest one in Europe. It has 6 nuclear reactors for a total of 6 gigawatts of energy that it's capable of producing. And the use of military force, the storming of an operating nuclear facility with ground forces was really something we have not seen before. What followed was, again, quite an unprecedented case of a nuclear power plant finding itself under occupation of a hostile military force. Not just the danger to the facilities and the nuclear material that's stored there, but first and foremost to the operators that are responsible for the safety of the plant. So all of them found themselves hostages of a Russian occupying force and had to perform their very demanding duties under considerable physical and psychological duress.
Do you have witnesses and contact with the people working at the plant today?
I do. I have had the honor to interact and interview many of them and gather and record their stories. All of them are horrifying in their own way. Not only the danger that they lived under every day, they showed up to work, worrying about their families back in the city, as well as over the safety of their plant and the supply chains and the deliveries that are necessary for the safe operation of the plant, but also later on their own evacuation stories, how they managed to escape from the occupied territories. And that journey is also rife with all sorts of dangers and I've talked to people who have been illegally detained and interrogated by the FSB, the Russian security services. Some of them have been tortured. Some of them are, to this day, worry about the families that they left behind, elderly parents, and so forth. And so this is the truly unprecedented and truly unique part of the Zaporizhzhia story, this human dimension, the focus on the operators and how they, under enormously difficult circumstances, managed to still act as professionally as they could in order to avoid another major accident in Ukraine. And so to them, we owe an enormous debt of gratitude that nothing terrible happened in those early days of invasion and occupation. Just like we owe a debt of gratitude to the Chernobyl liquidators and firefighters and the cleanup crews that risked their lives and health in order to deal with the consequences of that accident.
What would you have hoped the international community had learned after the Chernobyl accident?
So the impact of Chernobyl on the general nuclear safety regime and nuclear operations worldwide was enormous. As I said, the concept of nuclear safety culture, that is a dedication of every person working at the plant, any nuclear facility, to have nuclear safety as their paramount priority, to design systems, technological systems, safety systems, but also to train your personnel to attend to these systems and these technologies in such a way as to avoid the repetition of something like Chernobyl. That has had an impact on nuclear energy operations the world over. At the International Atomic Energy Agency, we saw the adoption very quickly after the accident in the summer of 1986, two major conventions, one on the notification of nuclear accidents and another on mutual assistance. And if anyone who knows how difficult it is to get anything done in some of these international fora can appreciate the urgency that led to the adoption of these conventions. Later on in 1994, there was a convention on nuclear safety that was adopted and again became part and parcel of the way the IAEA, sort of the technical cooperation and upgrades that they advocate for or consult on with the operators around the world. So there was a flurry of institutional and normative activity in the space. Unfortunately, I have to say that we have not seen the requisite activity in the nuclear security space following the attacks on Ukrainian nuclear facilities. So outside of the condemnation, right, at the IAEA, at the Board of Governors of the IAEA, at the General Assembly of the United Nations, we have not seen a push to strengthen the restraint on the attacks on nuclear facilities worldwide. And again, we talked about Ukraine, but the Middle East is now a new theater where nuclear facilities are in peril and under attack in the middle of the war. And so this is an issue, certainly for the development of nuclear energy going forward, where many countries today are looking to deploy nuclear energy as a way to mitigate climate change. But this deployment is likely happening in a space, international space, where the restraint on attacks on nuclear facilities is actually eroding instead of strengthening.
What do you think needs to happen? And what international bodies do we have left? What multilateral systems do we have left who could handle the situation?
There's certainly, it is a challenging situation because the violators of these norms are major stakeholders in the international system and in the system of nuclear energy governance. It's the Russian Federation and now the United States in the Middle East. So when the major players in the international system, major stakeholders go rogue, as it were, it is very difficult to enforce any rules and enforce any norms or introduce new ones. And so I think it is a challenge, an open challenge to the middle powers, to the democratic countries of the world, but also other interested parties the world over, who don't want to see another Chernobyl happen, who don't want to see another Zaporizhzhia happen, to get together, to band together, and to really push new norms or the strengthening of the existing norms, the enforcement of the existing norms in this space, and hold a united front, as it were.
Do you remain hopeful? What gives you the energy to work in this difficult field?
One must remain hopeful, and what inspires me and encourages me is the courage of the Ukrainian nuclear operators, who, with very little direction, with very little protection from any corners, either the national or international space, who continued and persevered and did their job to the very difficult requirements that they were under in terms of nuclear safety and security of their plant. And if they could persevere, if they could find that courage, I think all of us have to do the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.